Welcome to Marin Voices and Views. With Lawrence A. Strick, I'm Peter B. Collins. In our second segment today, we'll honor San Rafael Mayor Al Boro, who just retired after 20 years as mayor. This show begins our third year here on Channel 26, and we're proud of the work that we've done, the voices and views of Marin that we've brought to you. And I want to establish that it's all Larry's fault. This was his idea.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much. I always told you if it worked, it's my idea, and if it didn't, it's yours. So I accept the compliment.
Today, we want to start off and focus on a dispute between Comcast and the Marin Community Media Center, where this show and many other local programs are produced. Now, the Media Center is a project of the Marin Telecommunications Agency, the joint powers authority that negotiated the cable contract under which Comcast advanced about $3 million for the construction and operation of this media center. Larry Bragman is a Fairfax Town Council member. He was mayor last year. He returns to our show today. He's also a board member of MTA and the Community Media Center. Larry, welcome back.
Thanks a lot, Peter.
And congratulations on your recent re-election.
Thanks for that too. Appreciate it.
Now, this is a complicated situation, and I'm going to do my best to explain it here, and then you can correct any factual errors or nuances that our viewers need to know about. And I want to thank Peter Seidman of the Pacific Sun. On December 2nd, he published an excellent report on this dispute. So Comcast is the third cable operator that the county has dealt with on the contract that was supposed to run until about 2016. Supervisor Susan Adams worked for years on the agreement that moved public access TV from the cable company to this nonprofit media center. And that deal allowed Comcast to charge Marin cable users 49 cents a month until they could recover the $3 million or so that they advanced to pay for the media center. So in 2006, the state re-regulated cable companies under legislation called DIVCA. That stands for the Digital Infrastructure and Video Communications Act. And I will add that the bill passed through the legislature, and shortly after, the speaker, Fabian Nunez, solicited and received a $1 million political contribution from AT&T.
Nice.
DIVCA allows the cable operator to override local agreements. And last year, MTA agreed to operate under the state franchise rules. So, the Marin 49-cent rate was supposed to be replaced by a 1% rate, 1% of cable revenues from the county, and is that correct?
It would be 1% of the cable television subscription fees.
Okay.
So it wouldn't include internet, wouldn't include phone, just
right.
Cable television subscription fees.
Okay. So that was intended to pay back the loan, and part of it, this under the 1%, some of it would pay back the Comcast loan, and some would be for operating revenues for the media center.
Actually, no. What happened was that when the decision was made to switch to the state franchise, which is what DIVCA really is, it's like a cookie cutter franchise agreement that the state legislature passed with the cooperation and input from the cable companies like Comcast, that it actually replaces the existing agreement, so that when MTA switched to the DIVCA agreement, it supplanted, it replaced the existing agreement. So it's a new deal.
But Comcast disagrees. Is that the
Comcast
nexus of this dispute, that Comcast wants to keep the 49-cent rate, doesn't want to go to the 1%? Is that
well,
accurate?
As far as I can understand it, trying to understand Comcast is a little bit difficult because they sometimes play by their own rules. Under the old agreement, Comcast had an option to charge Marin subscribers, cable television subscribers, 49 cents a month to reimburse themselves for the capital they put up front to establish this center, and there were a couple other projects, including internet projects that we funded with that money.
Okay.
That was an option. It wasn't required. It wasn't a right. It was an option that they could choose to exercise or to not exercise. After we entered into that agreement in 2006, DIVCA came into being. It completely offered a new arrangement. And under DIVCA rules, each jurisdiction and each cable provider could switch to a DIVCA agreement. Under DIVCA, the cable provider, Comcast in this case, collects 1% per month from the cable subscribers.
And I take it that's more than is generated by the 49 cent?
We think so. We
Okay.
think so. And that money under that statute is required to be paid to the franchisor, which in this case is the Marin Telecommunications Agency. So there's nothing in DIVCA that permits the cable company to pick and choose who they're going to pay the money that they're collecting from subscribers.
Now, in preparation for the show today, I contacted Comcast, and I spoke to Andrew Johnson, who's their regional vice president for communications, I guess in Northern California, but certainly for Marin. And he wouldn't come on the show. He indicated to me that there was some potential threat of litigation and that they had no interest in commenting because they didn't want to step on their own toes, I suspect, if litigation did occur. But Larry, what I hear you saying is that once the Marin Telecommunication Agency elects to proceed with the state franchise agreement, which is their absolute right, that election wipes out the prior agreement that they had with Comcast because it's now a state mandated law that must be followed by the particular cable agency.
That is the heart of the legal question before us, but I believe that is a correct statement, that it is effectively it is a restatement. It is a new contract. It's a new deal, and the old deal is no longer operative. And just to clarify one thing, I know it may sound confusing to folks watching it, but when we were negotiating the original agreement in 2006, we knew that the playing field was changing. We knew there was legislation in the wings. We knew everything could change, as did all the other parties, including Comcast, AT&T, and all the other providers. And so it is a dynamic playing field that we're operating in.
But excuse me, but fundamentally, I saw the purpose of DIVCA from the point of view of the cable operators as a way to unload cable access. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to share the bandwidth. They don't want to pay for production of community programming. And so DIVCA was their way out because DIVCA supersedes these local agreements like the one in Marin County. So aren't they now trying to have it both ways? That DIVCA was the way to gut local access, but holding on to the old contract is a way for them to reduce the amount of money they have to pay.
Well, I think it's a very self-serving position that they've taken, especially now that they're collecting the 1% fee, which we believe is far more than the 49-cent fee that they would have gotten under the old agreement, that they're now choosing to retain that. I mean, there's no provision for that in the law anywhere. And as far as the advantage they got from DIVCA, what DIVCA did is it eliminated competition among jurisdictions as far as negotiating franchise agreements. So you have a cookie cutter agreement for every jurisdiction in California. We're getting a 1% fee for our public media and access here in Marin. Portland just negotiated a deal, the city of Portland, Oregon, negotiated a deal with something like 2.5%. So, you know, you've got it's a big area. There's a lot of information out there, and, you know, the more you look into it, you know, the cable operators are very savvy about their corporate agenda and what's best for them. It is a little bit of a David and Goliath situation between us and Comcast. I think Comcast in its last quarter of 2010 or 2009 had something like a $300 to $400 million operating profit.
So
you're dealing with a very successful and a very profitable venture. And it does kind of boggle my mind that they're taking a position with a small franchise like Marin County, where they're putting out billing statements to our subscribers saying that the subscriber is paying a 1% fee for public education and government affairs, and it's being retained by that corporation.
So that's where I wanted to comment and ask you. So from a practical standpoint, Comcast, when it gets a check from me for my cable bill, 1% of that fee, 1% of my bill, is by law is supposed to be routed, if you will, to community access television.
Correct, to public education and government TV, our three stations that we're running here.
They cannot not accept that 1%. I can't say I don't want to give that 1%. It goes. Then, in essence, they are supposed to hold it in trust and provide it to Marin Telecommunication Authority, because it's to help them meet their payroll, the capital expenses they have,
Everything.
and the operating expenses. So the fact that they're not given the money is choking. It potentially can choke off the ability to have community access television in Marin.
It definitely could have an impact. It will have an impact. It is having an impact on our ability to operate here in Marin. And just one minor correction: technically, under the law, the money raised through DIVCA or otherwise is only to be spent on capital expenditures. It's not supposed to be used for operating expenses, which is another way that the cable operators, in essence, hobble community media. Because why should community media, why once that money comes back to the community, should it be limited to capital expenditures? I mean, there's only so much equipment, so many things that you need. What we really need is to fund, you know, an ongoing and healthy community media here in Marin and everywhere.
Larry,
Go ahead.
well, go ahead.
No, well, so let's say that they choke it. It's choked. They're not going to give the money. This place runs out of money. What happens to the TV stations? What happens to Channel 26? What happens to Channel 27?
Well, it's if hopefully if I stay on MTA, I think MTA knows the value and the importance of this institution, and we will not let that happen. I think there are creative things that we can do financially to keep it going. It's going to be a hardship. There are going to be costs that need to be paid. But I think, from what I know, I think we're willing. I think the commitment's there. And I think we all recognize the importance of the Community Media Center and believe in it and believe in its mission.
Larry, in retrospect, do you think that maybe it was a mistake for your board to move away from the local contract and adopt the state franchise?
No, I don't, Peter. The state franchise really gave us an unsuspected, an unexpected opportunity for funding. These types of community media centers cannot prosper without some kind of support consistently. We can't do it on telethons. We can't do it by sending out envelopes and requesting money. This is an important institution for us in Marin and everywhere. We need public media. It is so important for our democracy and our community that we have our own voice unfiltered by commercial media. So no, I think it was an opportunity that we needed to take, and I think it's going to work out. I do. I think the law's on our side.
Larry Bragman, on the board of the MTA and the Marin Community Media Center. Thanks for joining us
Thanks
today.
a lot.
Thank you, Larry. Tonight, Peter, we're welcoming Al Boro to our show. Mayor Boro served for 20 years as the mayor of San Rafael, and we want to honor that. His public service goes 40 years, first coming to the Planning Commission in 1971, serving on the San Rafael City Council between 87 and 91, serving as mayor, being elected then and re-elected 4 times. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I want to thank you for your dedication and all the work you've performed in San Rafael and Marin County, and in particular, the vision and leadership you showed really early on when you got here, and you're looking down 4th Street, and one of the anchor tenants, Macy's, says, I'm not going to be there anymore. And I think you took that to the challenge. And how was that coming into a new job and having to work with an issue like that?
Well, at the time that happened, we had already been working on a downtown vision plan for San Rafael. We had 24 residents and 2 on the council who were working on that. And we knew what we wanted, but we weren't expecting Macy's to do what they did. And it was quite traumatic, quite frankly, but over time, we saw nothing was happening with that site. Myself and the then redevelopment director, we had authority from the council to negotiate a purchase of the site. There were 2 parties, Macy's and a bank in Hawaii, that owned the property, and we worked that out. And then we had a very wide open planning process. We had people come talk about what they wanted, and we ended up with residential, 118 apartment units, 25% of those below market rate, retail and office space. So it's a great complex, plus it has 246, as I remember, parking spaces underground.
Now, many of the improvements were funded by the redevelopment agency, and I will make an exception to thank George Lucas and his ex-wife Marcia Lucas for their generous contributions to the restoration of the Rafael Theater and the work of the Mill Valley Film Festival. But Governor Brown has dismantled most of the redevelopment agencies across the state. Do you agree with this move, and are there other ways to fund civic infrastructure and development projects now?
Well, there may be other ways. We have used redevelopment money. In the case of Macy's, we basically brokered the deal. We bought the site, we held it, and then we sold it for more than we paid for it. So there's no redevelopment money into it. In the case of the theater, we did buy that site for $550,000 through redevelopment. We sold it to the Film Institute of Northern California for $1, and then they built this beautiful 3-screen cinemaplex that draws about 10,000 people a month to downtown. It was a great investment. That kind of flexibility seems to be going away with the governor's approach to redevelopment. I'm sure there'll be other public-private partnerships that come to pass, but right now, I think we're all hoping that maybe this thing will be turned back somewhat.
In addition to the great success of redevelopment of 4th Street, as you look back at your tenure as mayor, what are some of the things that you found that really worked out well for you and you feel are a successful legacy to the city?
Well, when I first ran for office in 1987, I had 2 concerns. One was the downtown, and the downtown was in very bad shape. And the second was the canal, because the canal was going through quite a change as far as the demographics, as far as people moving in who are new to this country. And I felt it was important that we find a way to get these people assimilated into our community. So those were the 2 things that I first worked on. And in the case of the canal, over time, I think we have a very vibrant neighborhood. 25% of the population of San Rafael lives in a 2.5 square mile radius, which is the canal. Things have changed there over the past 20 years. We have Pickweed Community Center, which the city took the lead in building and raising private funds for. We have a private clinic. We have the Marin Community Clinic there. We have a brand new Bahia Vista School, and then a new market that went into the
Sure.
district. So it's been great. In the case of downtown, I had seen too many downtowns that were abandoned in California. And I was very concerned about Macy's. The fact it would be empty, there'd be fences around it, pigeons in the building, and people not very desirable sleeping around it. So that's why we took a very aggressive approach there. We had told the Vision Committee that all that we had the money for was to basically redo the streets and the sidewalks on the main part of 4th Street. We had no other money to put into that project. The rest would have to come through private development. And over time, that's what happened. And in 1991 or 2, when we finished that vision, it was supposed to be a 15-year life cycle. What do you expect to see in 2007 when you are down on 4th Street? And we went to other cities. We found out what they were doing. We found what we liked. We found out what we didn't like. We introduced housing, which was not the original plan, but we found out that housing definitely keeps a downtown safe and vibrant at night, and it worked well. And now we have, I think, over 700 housing units in the downtown, about 25% of those below market rate.
And Mayor Boro, when you look back, what would you say were some of the bombs or failures that occurred under your watch?
Well, I don't know if you'd call it a failure. The biggest problem that we've had most of my watch has been financing. You know, we struggled early in the 90s. There was a recession. Then we passed a half-cent sales tax override, and the voters passed that by 70%. And we only needed 50% plus 1 to pass that, so that was great. The community had belief in our needs. Then we were doing relatively well, and all of a sudden, things happened in 2008 with the stock market. Pension funds are way out of whack. Our commitment to pensions now are way underfunded. So that's a big problem. The current council is going to have to find ways to deal with that. There's no magic bullet. We were successful in our last negotiations to do some things going forward for new employees, but there's a lot more that has to be done. So it's constant that you're looking at your budget. We laid, I think, about 50 people off in the past 3 years, and on a force of about 430 people, that's a lot of people.
You know, one of the things that I think about when I think about the mayor of San Rafael is you're not San Francisco or New York or Houston, a huge city, and you're not this little small city in the middle of nowhere. And I wonder how the day-to-day process of being a mid-sized city mayor works. I know you told us a few moments ago you sat through 500 city council meetings, but it's got to be a lot more than that on a daily basis. And how would you describe the role of a mid-city mayor in California?
Well, the first thing I found out after going to a few meetings, the U.S. Conference of Mayors, is there's no unique problem that we don't have. Every city has the same problems, whether it be homelessness, whether it be immigration, whether it be budget problems, whether it be trying to protect, you know, the integrity of the community as far as the lifestyle that people look for. So, you know, each town has its own personality, and in our city we have, I think it's about 37 different neighborhoods, and those neighborhoods all are different. You find that out when you walk them during a campaign, and they all have different needs. So it's important that we maintain the integrity of the neighborhoods, which in turn reflects on the whole city. In the downtown in particular, our theme was in the vision Alive After 5. We continue to do that. You can't compete in a downtown with a mall. So you have to do other things to get people there, events, activities like the movies, restaurants and so on, and then of course meet people during the day. We have this one building, the corporate center, which is down on 2nd Street. When that's completely leased up, there'll be 2,000 people in that center. And the property owners are telling me they're getting close to a major tenant coming in. That'll be great for the downtown. And the best part about it is it's 2 blocks away from where the train's going to end.
Mm-hmm. The IJ has criticized you for not pursuing development at St. Vincent and the adjacent Silvera property. Do you think you did the right thing?
Definitely, I think we did the right thing. What had happened, we were out of the country when that election happened between Paul Cohn and Susan Adams, and Paul lost, Susan won. And the board tilted. We had support from the board to go forward with what we were doing. And the Board of Supervisors,
the county.
Right. Uh-huh. And 3 of the supervisors pretty much indicated they didn't want to go the direction that we were heading. And quite frankly, to continue a process, it was a contentious process, took a lot of time. And then we get at the end of the road and we would have opposition from the county, and they had to grant certain things for us to do this since we were going to annex it from them. We decided it just wasn't prudent to go forward. And quite frankly, I think I was right, the council was right, because it's almost 20 years ago, just a little less than, not quite 20, about 15, whatever. and nothing's happened there, and the county's had jurisdiction over it the whole time. So I don't think there was a desire then or now to do much with that site.
You know, you just mentioned where the train's going to end, or terminal. I suspect you're referring to the SMART train.
Yes.
And you've been on the SMART board, you've been on the Golden Gate Bridge District board over the years. Is SMART going to make it?
Yes, SMART will definitely make it. In fact, last December, they sold their bonds. In the first part of this year, they're hopefully going to release a contract, and there is a recall movement out there. The bond money has been acquired, but it's been secured in escrow until we deal with the recall position on the ballot measure. I'm sure will prevail, and because I think the community understands that we need to use that right-of-way, that public right-of-way that's very valuable, to build the train. And the fact that we're doing it in segments is not saying we're going back on our word. We're doing what we can afford to do with the economy and what we can make happen. So the initial segment is from Santa Rosa to downtown San Rafael, and that should be up in about 2015.
And you're not concerned that we might end up with white elephants with stretches of service that aren't contiguous? Because after all, we completed the tunnel to the ferry dock, and now the train will not run that far. It will terminate on the current plan in San Rafael.
And that's because of the funding that's available with the money that we have as a result of the downturn in the economy. But efforts are already underway to seek additional funding, and the next segment will be to extend both north to Cloverdale and south to Larkspur. And it may take a little while, but that'll happen. And, you know, BART, 20-odd years later, is still adding to its line. So we have a very definitive line. It's, I think, 77 miles in total, and I believe we'll achieve it.
Well, as of last year, you're a free man from the council meetings. How are you going to spend your time?
Well, it's taken me a while to break away. I acquired a lot of things, papers and God knows what else. So I'm sorting through that still. I'm hoping we have a home in Sonoma. I hope I can get up to that more often. And we're hoping to take a trip soon and not worry about missing a council meeting or two. So I think, you know, this is the second time I retired. I retired when I was with Pacific Bell. I had no idea I was going to run for mayor. I truly have no idea what I'm going to do next except, you know, stay connected and hopefully enjoy life.
We're really grateful for your service to San Rafael. Thank you, Al Boro.
Thank you.